Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. It is the first Friday in November, and it is supposed to be Jobs Friday, the most important economic update that is happening in this economy right now is all about jobs. And the first Friday of every month, we should get the jobs update telling us what the federal government is seeing in payroll numbers, in the number of jobs that were created or lost in the month of October. But guess what? The government is shut down. So we're not getting jobs information today. We are getting nothing as we're continuing to get now 40 days into this shutdown. And so let's talk about what we do know and what we can control. First of all, if you are in the state of California and if you are aware of what the California Dream for All program is, and you haven't heard, there is another round of money that is coming out and it's expected to be opened up for lottery early 2026. So if you know somebody who is a first-time home buyer, first-generation home buyer that's looking to get into a home with a significant amount of down payment assistance, it is a great opportunity right now. Reach out to me, scan this QR code up above, and connect with me to make that happen. So what's happening right now? First of all, kind of a big picture of the state of the economy. And we are seeing two economies. And we're seeing the AI economy, and then we're seeing kind of the rest of the economy. The AI economy is booming. It is doing really, really good. Job growth, money being spent, profits being made. And then the rest of the economy, not so hot. We're seeing a lot of challenges on Main Street. We're seeing a lot of challenges with jobs. There was October last month. There was a report that came out the other day that said for the month of October, we had the more layoff notifications, job losses announced than any October since 2003. Now, it was a weird report. Like, why do we only compare Octobers? But maybe it's seasonal. And we say, hey, during October, during June, during whatever, every year, each month has a different seasonal rise and fall of jobs created or jobs lost. But what I found was interesting is Target announced a huge number of job losses in the month of October. Target should be super busy right now and expecting to be busier as we head into the holiday season. October is when you should be adding jobs if you're in retail. So the fact that Target announced a high number of job reduction layoffs in the month of October, that is telling about what's happening on Main Street and how this economy is going in two different directions. And the problem is the Fed sees strength in the overall economy. And they're saying, hey, the overall job numbers are good. Well, they're not good, but well, they're not bad either. And so we're okay with that. They've kind of changed the expectations. It's like grading on the curve. Okay. If the teacher says, man, everybody in my class is failing, well, then how do we fix it? Do we make the kids smarter or teach them more or get better tools to teach them? No, let's just grade on a curve. Let's just go ahead and say, well, whoever did the best in class, even if they got half the answers wrong on the test, they have an A because, well, that's what the curve's all about. And that is essentially what the Federal Reserve is doing with the economy right now. And they're saying, job growth, schmob growth, I don't really care. As long as we don't have job losses, we're happy with that. So they've lowered the bar and they've said that's okay. And what we're seeing this week is we've seen a little bit of job growth, like a little bit. It's very apathetic, very, very small number of jobs that were created this week. But the Fed's jumping on it and saying, see, right there, that is a reason why we're not in trouble. Yeah, but part of that little bit of job growth is in the AI world, is on the AI side of things that are continuing to grow and to hire. And so do you have job growth if you take out the AI boom? I won't call it a bubble. It's not a bubble. There's been talk about whether it's a bubble. But the AI boom, if you take out the AI boom, are we really seeing job growth? And we're in a transition. And so we're basically, having the Fed say, hey, we cut rates last week, but we're not really sure if that's really going to be our motto going forward. And so the Fed cutting rates isn't necessarily helping us today and going forward because we expected the Fed to cut rates, and they did. And we expected the Fed to cut rates in December. We had almost 100% expectation the Fed was going to cut rates in December. Now it's about 65% expectation. And that expectation of what's going to happen is what's driving rates today. I know that it's not as simple as you would like it to be, but the Federal Reserve does not control mortgage rates. What the mortgage world and the bond market thinks the Fed is going to do, where they think rates are going to go in the future, that's what they're setting rates at today. And so it is a predictive model, not a reactive model. And so it's very, very important to understand. And so essentially we've got the AI economy surging and the real economy not so much. And the question is, what happens? Are we having a direct shift from all the people who were in the normal economy that are getting laid off? Are they going to get picked up in the AI economy? Where are all these employees coming from in the AI economy? If you say it's all just a shift of the same people, no big deal. But I think we're going to see more challenges in certain regions. We're going to see more challenges across certain socioeconomic sectors. And I think that's going to impact housing as well. And so we got to pay really, really close attention to this, because there's going to be a shift. We're in the middle of a shift right now. As a matter of fact, AI is changing everything. AI isn't just changing the jobs market, but it's changing home buying. And it's really making a shift in how buyers and sellers go about the home buying process. Matter of fact, yesterday I had a training for realtors, I had a bunch of them showing up talking about Zillow's new integration to ChatGPT. And as a home buyer, I want you to understand this tool is an amazing tool to help you to figure out what properties work best for you. Because right now, you go into Zillow, you go to Redfin, you go to realtor.com, and you're filling out boxes. You're saying, I want a 3-bedroom or more, 2-bath or more, between $500,000 and $600,000. And the problem is that it won't tell you about properties that have maybe a den that they can't call a bedroom, and so it doesn't actually fit your criteria. Or they won't tell you about properties that are, instead of between 500 and 600, they listed it at 499,999 because they were trying to get under 500. The problem is you said 500 to 600, and that one misses your criteria, and it would have been the perfect home for you. And so this static search process that we have gotten used to over the last 20 years, which has evolved a little bit over the last 20 years, is now changing significantly. As a home buyer, you now have the ability to talk in theoretical terms instead of literal search terms. And so you can go into ChatGPT and use the Zillow connector and say, I'm looking for homes that are within walking distance of a park where my kids can play. That is going to keep my mortgage payment somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 a month based on me putting 20% down. That's criteria you can't put into Zillow right now, but you can put it into ChatGPT and it can extrapolate that and it can look for it. And now you're not looking for exact criteria. Now, Zillow through ChatGPT is searching for things it thinks meets your needs. Depends on how you're interacting with it. We're going to learn how to ask better questions, just like we've learned over the last few years how to ask better questions of AI. Now we have to learn how to ask better questions of AI that's helping us do home search filtering. And so this is very, very much reshaping the buyer experience as this becomes the new norm. It is currently not the new norm. I'm encouraging you to give it a shot. I think it'll be a different way to go about trying to narrow down your criteria and what home is going to work for you. And a lot of realtors are worried this is the beginning of the end for realtors. And the truth is it's not. The truth is that today you can do home search online and you can find the home. Your realtor's job is not, I'm going to be the keeper of the list of homes that you need to come to me to figure out what's listed for sale. Okay, that's just not the truth anymore. That hasn't been the truth for 20 years. The value in a real estate agent is way beyond that. It's local market knowledge, and it is knowledge of what the seller's circumstances are that can help them to drive your negotiation tactics. That is the biggest thing that a realtor does for you. And there's a lot of things a realtor does. But to me, the biggest value that the realtor adds is, number one, negotiation skills. Understanding, being able to pick up the phone and call the listing agent and ask them, what is the seller's motivation? Tell me the seller's story. Recognizing that maybe the listing agent's not going to tell you and say, yeah, I'm not going to answer those questions, which in and of itself is telling. And now they can start looking up details about the property and about when the seller bought their property and when the seller last refinanced, because this is all public information. And then you're looking at what's happening with current buyers and sellers and the inventory in the market. And are we leaning towards being a buyer's market or leaning towards being a seller's market? And all of these things come into play because it's not big national market. It's a regional market. It's geographic to your area. And the strategy that you use is based on the area that you are in. And no AI is going to replace that, or at least anytime soon. The human component, the human in the loop is critical. And as AI gets better, we have to understand that AI can do certain work significantly better. And that leaves the human the opportunity to focus more of their time, energy, and effort on what they do best. Okay, so no, I don't think it's the beginning of the end for real estate agents. I just think that you, in your interaction with your realtor, need to make sure that you guys are on the same page as far as what are you looking for in a realtor, and are they going to be able to provide that? Because unfortunately, there are some realtors out there who still think, well, my number one job is to help you find the home. That's a small part of it. It is part of it, but that is not the number one job a realtor has. They're also helping you negotiate up front, and they're helping you shepherd you through the entire process. What inspections are you ordering? When should you push back on the seller to repair some things, and when should you not? Keeping all of the parties of the transaction on track, including those lenders that aren't me, that don't have any idea what they're doing. Just kidding. But it is really, really important that you pick an amazing realtor. So let's move on here. AI and lending. So we talked about AI and real estate. Let's talk quickly about AI and lending. The credit models are changing. Approvals are happening faster. This is no different than about 25, 30 years ago, when we went from 100% human involved underwriting, where the computer had nothing to do with it. Now they added what's called AUS, automated underwriting systems. And everybody thought, oh my gosh, the underwriters' jobs are going away. No, they didn't go away. The underwriter has a very, very critical, important job, but about, I don't know, my best guess, 90% of the loans that are done, 95% of the loans that are done, the computer for the last 30 years has made the decision to say you are approved. Okay, the human only gets involved in making the final decision sometimes. But the problem is there's a lot of stuff the computer cannot evaluate. And so the human on every transaction, the human underwriter is evaluating the paperwork and giving the computer the result of their evaluation. The computer does not see everything, cannot read through between the lines the way that a human can. And so that's where it's critical that the human will always be involved. But speaking of the computer, in 10 days, Fannie Mae is changing their computer. They are eliminating the minimum credit score of 620. So right now, if you have a credit score under 620, you cannot get a Fannie Mae conventional loan, period. You cannot. There is a hard stop. And now they're eliminating the 620 credit score. So those of you with 500 credit scores, don't get too excited, because some of my peers in the last 2 days when this came out says, oh my gosh, that's great, because there are so many well-deserving people that have super low FICO scores that deserve a conventional loan. I don't believe that's what's happening. I believe what's ultimately happening is the new Vantage credit score system is being introduced into lending, and the Vantage score uses a little bit different of a model. And so you might have somebody that says, hey, I'm a 625 on this one and a 615 on that one. And they can't really draw the same hard and fast lines as they can currently when there's only one model, okay? But essentially what this change means is that we are dealing with more of the computer making decisions based on its overall evaluation, which might mean somebody with a 580 credit score could qualify for a conventional loan, as long as they have very, very low loan to value ratio. In other words, lots of equity. Now, that's not usually the case. If you have a low credit, you probably don't have a lot of equity. But there are some situations. I was speaking with a client yesterday who they paid cash for a property a few years ago because they got an inheritance and they paid cash for it. They have a low credit score. Well, they're looking to do a loan on that property to pull some cash out. Cash out is a higher risk. So I don't know if they're going to allow cash out for a conventional loan at a low FICO score. But what I will tell you is that it opens up opportunities for situations like that, as long as the risk overall makes sense, and credit score is only one part of the risk. The second thing I'll tell you is it's going to take some time to figure out on the back end, because Fannie Mae is not determining what the investors are willing to buy. Fannie Mae is saying, what are we willing to approve? But if the investors won't buy it, you've got a problem. It's kind of like FHA. FHA says you can go down to a 500 credit score, but I don't know a single lender that goes below 550. And many lenders cut it off at 580 or 620 because there's just too much risk down there at the bottom. So it's a good example right there. All right. So let's talk about a couple other big picture things. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're looking to go private. What is that going to mean? I'm not going to dive too deep into it today, but it's not going to mean a whole lot to you. The truth is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac write the rules on what you get when you qualify, what your requirements are to qualify for a mortgage, and they're trying to put them back to being a private company like they were before the great financial crisis in 2007 and 2008. So this is possibly going to lead to more innovation because the private market is more willing to take risks than the public market is, than the government is. But it also could cost more on mortgages down the road, because when you are a company that is publicly traded instead of somebody that's run by the government, you have to make sure you're returning money for your shareholders. But here's the dirty secret. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been returning money for the federal government for years. It's been a money-making machine for the government because the federal government implemented something called loan level price adjusters years ago, and those are looking to change again. So what's a loan level price adjuster? It's the risk matrix. And it says if you have a big down payment and a great credit score, you get the best deal. As your down payment decreases and or your credit score decreases, the risk to your loan increases, and therefore the fee increases. Here's the challenge. Everything on that chart is an additional fee. But you as a home buyer, you as somebody wanting to refinance, you're not looking to pay more in fees. And so historically, we've just built that into interest rates. We said, well, we'll trade, instead of charging an extra 1% in fee, we'll charge you an extra 0.25% in rate. We'll make that up in the first 4 years. That isn't actually possible right now. There's very little room because rates are still towards the high end of where they've been. There's not much more room to add to the interest rate to offset the fee. So the federal government right now is talking about changing those fees. Well, that's interesting. They're talking about lowering those fees. That's great. Except what if the federal government doesn't control Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac anymore? They aren't in control of those fees anymore. But what they're talking about right now is they're talking about lowering the cost for cash out refinances and lowering the cost for second homes. So back 5 years ago, 3 years ago, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac significantly increased the risk associated with second homes. So there's three categories of homes: primary residence, second home, and investment property. And it used to be that primary residences and second homes had about the same risk because it's for your own personal use. And so we're going to treat it like it's yours and not a business property. And so you pay a lot higher rate and fee for an investment property, but about the same for primary and second homes. And then a few years ago, that changed. And they made second homes just as risky as investment properties. They said, nope, if it's not your primary home, you're going to pay the higher risk that comes with it. And now they're saying, maybe we should bring that back down. Maybe that isn't really the case anymore. How many of you are looking to buy a second home? How big of a deal is that right now? It's probably not. Okay. The other one, though, that's a bigger deal is cash out refinancing. Cash out refinancing has always been a higher risk. Treating your home like an ATM machine doesn't end well if you keep doing it over and over again. And leading up to the great financial crisis in 2008, we had a lot of people doing that and over again, refinancing their home, pulling money out. And then sooner or later, the machine stops working. The equity doesn't keep growing the way that it did, but your spending kept growing, and therefore you end up in trouble. And so that created a concern about treating your home like an ATM machine, and that's an appropriate concern. But cash out refinancing is reasonable, appropriate, and a good strategy when used properly. And they're talking about lowering the risk associated with that. Here's the problem. If they lower risk on one side, they've got to raise it on the other side. They've got to keep making the money. And so where's that risk going to offset, and where are they going to make the money up on the other side? That's what I'm worried about. All right. So we are almost done here. Basically, just to recap, interest rates have moved up some over the last week and a half. It is in response to the Fed saying, hey, we're not sure that we're going to lower rates in December. The mortgage market is continuing to evolve. The real estate market is evolving. AI is rewriting the economy, and it's really creating some challenges in being able to predict where the economy is going to go. So it's really, really important that for me, it's really important to make sure that I'm your resource and that I help give you good information because tech is changing, the markets are changing, information is easy to come by and hard to trust. And so I appreciate you trusting me to guide you through this process. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them right now. If you are watching recorded, please post your questions and I'll get to them later. I am 100% interviewing for the job to be your mortgage lender, whether you're looking to purchase a home, refinance a home, buy investment properties. Scan this QR code and let's connect. And I really, really look forward to helping guide you in your home ownership journey. Thanks so much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.